Good evening, good evening, good evening. I am Renee Williams, and I am recovering addict. And I missed y'all on Fridays. I had another speaking engagement out of town, and I thank y'all. I'm back today. Don't miss a beat. You know, before we get started, I want to open up a moment of silence for the suffering addicts who still suffering in and outside of the walls. Cut that TV down, son. My God. I hope everybody is doing good and is fine and still safe and still recovering. I want to give a shout out to Robin. Her mother passed. And Robin, I wanted you to know that I love you and shall see you next week. I thank God. I just thank God for everything that He does, everything that He do that we can't see, everything that He's going to do that we need Him to do, and everything that He keeps on doing in our lives on a daily basis. You know, so I want to give a shout out to the ones that make things possible for other people who think that's not possible. You know, for people that let them know there's still hope, there's still success stories. You know, to me, we are recovering peoples. We come out with the best stories in the world because we live them stories. They ain't made up stories. It ain't no fantasy stories. We didn't make nothing up. We live our truth. We live that story. And that's why I always think our stories are so important. I always think, you know, when you go to a meeting and you hear everybody else's things that they went through, they are stories. We became truth. We became the character that's in this story. And nobody can take that away from us. You know, and we don't have to get paid for it. We don't have to be a star. All we have to do is recover. Did you hear me? All we have to do is recover. And recover not just from addiction, but recover from all of the self-centeredness, all our stuff. Excuse me. We have to recover from a lot of things. It ain't just addiction. It ain't just addiction. Please let me remind you, it ain't its behavioral problem. It's progressing problems. It's our getting out there and not having a will and a purpose just to carry the mess on that we do. So I wanted to celebrate and talk about the therapists who do the important, the therapists and the counselors. You know, thank y'all for letting God get y'all recovery so you can come back and show us and the newcomers how it works. You know, this eye is watering. It's been watering. But anyway, thank y'all. Thank y'all for being a gift in my life. Thank y'all for, you know, staying clean. Ones who celebrate clean time. You know, I really applaud you because in this life and time, we going to go through some stuff. And we are still going through some stuff, but the only difference is we ain't using. So to the counselor and to the ones that's helping the inpatient, the outpatient people as they come in, you know, I am so grateful to God put y'all in my life because I once had a beautiful and well-known counselor, and through God and the 12-step program and through him helped me get my life better on track. You know, so to the ones that have lost their loved ones and due to addiction or overdose, you could be all over the world. It doesn't matter. Addiction is addiction. An overdose is an overdose. Losing a loved one is losing a loved one. And so I wanted to applaud to you that I know you're going through because I go through. But, you know, you have to keep moving on. You have to focus and you have to understand what happened and understand that, God don't put more on us than we can bear. And to the God of my understanding, I thank you. I thank you for purpose. I thank you for having a right mind. We thank you for allowing us to have a clean time in our lives and to have our own story. And everybody has their own story. And a lot of them is unbelievable stories, and a lot of them is show enough stories. So I just wanted to say to the ones that's struggling, this disease of an addiction is so powerful. And I hate this disease because it does the same thing that it does to me to other people's. And they struggling out there. And to the mother who she know I'm talking to, thank you for asking questions. Thank you for getting your daughter inpatient. Thank you for paying attention and not just turning your back on her. Thank you so much. I thank God but I had a speech and engagement, then we went out, and I had a good time. But I always think about my supporters. You mean a lot to me. And I know I mean a lot to some of y'all. And if I don't, keep praying for me anyway. Today we are on, this is a good step. Today, not even a step, this is a good thought. And I came up with this thought, and I do know that it's a good thought, because when we go back down memory lane and think about the things that we have done and how we came out of it and how we made it through an addiction and alcohol, pills, all of it is addiction. Every bit of it. You can't deny it. All of it is an addiction. Whether, I don't care what it is, anything that don't make you keep your right mind is drugs. And I know drugs. I done did them all, so I ain't got to count them out. Alcohol is a drug. Thank God for the NA program. Thank God for never giving up on me. Thank God for keeping me to do the purpose that I'm supposed to do. And I appreciate that. How deep is deep? I'm sorry if y'all see me keep messing with this eye. Something flew in my eye the other day, and it's still bothering me and watering. But I'm an overcomer. I'm an overcomer, So anyway, how deep is deep? First of all, addiction is a very deep, personal addiction. And I wanted to talk about tonight because we're going to show you, and we're going to talk about how deep is deep. Deep is when you doing some things and it's deep, and it's causing you some conflicts and some out-of-body experience and some shame and guilt and etc., etc. So I had picked the topic, how deep is deep, and I just want y'all to know, first of all, addiction is very deep. For the ones that don't understand it, and for the ones who ain't never been on addiction, for the ones that ain't never did drugs, for the ones that's codependent, for the ones that's dealing with their kids, father, mother, or son that's on addiction. You have to understand addiction is very real, and it causes harm, and it causes body harm. It causes us to do crazy things. It causes us to do things that I know that we don't appreciate that we done, but it was the addiction of our minds once we put them drugs inside of us. And I said addiction and takes us out of our character. It does. We are in the deceived modes whenever we up under addiction. Having a disease of addiction is very real. And for the ones who don't think it's real, it's real. And it can hit anybody at any given time. I say that always because that's a true fact. for the ones you think, for the good kid, or the one that you thought a kid or a mother or father could never do nothing, always was straight up. They the perfect mom, dad, son, daughter, cousin, uncle, auntie, you know, and then all of a sudden they get on addiction and now they terrible. You know, they doing things that they ain't got no business. They doing things that they know they shouldn't be doing. You know, they causing chaos in the family. You know, mothers and mothers against each other, fathers and fathers against each other, mother and fathers against each other, mother and son, or son and dad, or son and mother against each other. And it's always seemed like once we understand our habit and understand our disease, you know, then when we want to, we don't let the ones that didn't understand in, you know, and that's deep to me. That's deep that you wasn't an addict, you was using, and you did yourself, and your sons and your daughters saw you come up in a way that it was unbelievable. They didn't have no heroes, you know, because you was using. But yet when they get older to understand and ask questions like why, how deep is that? How deep that you come to you and like, Mom, I need some answers, or Dad, I need some answers, and you still got your hands up. You still don't want to talk about it. You know, it's not holding you in captivity of what you've done, but they need to understand it. You know, and so we have to allow ourselves to identify with ourselves how we became addicts and what we went through, and that the kids don't understand it. But most of the kids now is either, you know, doing weed, or either they drinking or smoking, you know, and I just wanted to give some pointers on that. You know, when you get yourself together, you got to allow yourself to tell the truth and allow yourself to let your kids in, because they have answers. They want to know why. They want to understand the difference. They want to know why you left them out. They want to know why you couldn't be there for them, or why you left them, and why you put them out there like that for them to defend themselves and all that. So they want to know that, you know, they really do. And we must maintain to understand the disease of an addiction, and to have an open mind, where when our kids want to know certain things, we got to be able to be. That's why we get clean. That's why we take ourselves and we start going to meeting, working steps, doing service work, getting sponsored, because we did not want to be broken no more. So that's the whole key. We don't want to be broken no more. So we have to understand that, you know, we have to give the next person a chance that we didn't give a chance when we was using. Simple facts. Simple fact. The reason I say how deep is deep is because we get so deep into our addiction that it's the unbelievable things to do and hurt other people's, you know. And that's why I said how deep is deep, because we get deep in our addiction. We get deep with already in our own self-will. Come on, own self-will. And then, you know, the addiction turn us into somebody that we don't like. So you can imagine, if we don't like ourselves at that particular time, then what makes you think somebody gonna keep putting up with you and keep doing things and deal with you when you can't even deal with you? That's common sense. Come on, y'all. We get so deep into our addiction, we do things that is unbelievable, things that hurt other people's, and not just, we ain't gonna even talk about other people's right now, things we did to hurt ourselves, and it led us to hurt other people's, you know. So it's deep when we lose ourselves, when people try to help us and continue to help us, and we continue to hurt them and take from them. See, I can tell that's a part of my story. I don't know about nobody else's story, but that is a part of my story. And I can identify with that. I can understand how deep is deep. I can understand that. It says, and going, you know, it was so deep when we will be getting high or drinking to the capacity to where we thought we were sick or dying and going to the hospital. That's kind of deep. You know, we already know what the problem is. They don't know what the problem is, but we know what the problem is. And the problem ain't an addiction. The problem ain't a disease. The problem is if ourselves that got us to do the drugs and put the drugs in it. And we know we got a disease of an addiction going on. So how deep is that for us to go in the hospital and lay in the hospital on the bed of our affliction, on our bed, and sitting up thinking that we got high, thinking that, you know, do the doctors know? Will a blood test show? I'm just talking about me. You know, hey, Lois, how you doing, honey? And talking about me, you know, and how deep is that? That's deep when you land on a bed of affliction and you know you cause yourself harm and pain, and you laying there knowing that you went back and got high, knowing you done popped some pills, you know, knowing that you did some drugs. And that's pretty deep to me, because now we playing Russian roulette mind games with ourselves, is because we hoping that they don't find out. We hoping that the blood test don't show we've been drinking or getting high or popping pills or doing heroin or sniffing cocaine or whatever. But that's deep. When we can get to a place in our lives where we land on a bed of affliction and we can't tell no one. We can't even explain to nobody, because we in our self-pity. We don't want nobody to know we was doing drugs. We don't want nobody to know our lives had become unmanageable. We don't know that we going through things because of things that's around us. You know, and I'm going to speak about that in a few minutes. And so we have to learn, you know, to the point where we go to the doctor and we think we dying, we got chest pains, you know, we can't breathe, you know, and we think we to the point of capacity to where we finna die, so we urge ourselves to go to the hospital. But some people didn't make it to the hospital. Some people died in the addiction. Some people ain't here to tell their story. Because see, every story that deals with addiction is important to me, because we didn't have to make up no story. You understand me? We didn't have to make up no story. These are the things that happened to us. These are the things that we brought to ourselves. These are the things that we harmed ourselves and other peoples. You know, how we hurt other peoples, how we cause other peoples to be in pain for the rest of their life, how we hurt other peoples and maybe crashed into them or maybe did something. But in this process that I'm talking about, we still have to understand for forgiveness. We have to forgive ourselves. Hey, Robin, I'm so glad to see you, baby. You know, I'm so sorry for your mother loss. Like I said, keep in touch with me and stay focused. She will want you to do that. And I love you very much. And I need to see you this week. Thank you so much for being on here. So how deep is deep? Deep is deep when you are recovering. You can't use no more drugs. You can't take a drink when you done lost a parent or a father or a mother or a sister or a kid. We can't. That's deep. It's deep within ourselves that we have to get down in our own feelings and deal with naturally born feelings, because we can't do the things that we used to do to help us not feel. We got to feel everything we got to feel. And that's the good part of being clean. Because see, we won't forget. When you drink and get high to the capacity to where you don't remember or can't understand, then you get to the capacity to forget. And dealing with losing a loved one, you have to deal with natural born feelings. How deep is deep? And that's very deep. Because we, for us recovering addicts, we had to learn how to please ourselves through drugs and alcohol, so we wouldn't have to feel nothing. We wouldn't have to feel how we hurting, what we going through. And you know, I went through what Robin is going through. I've been there, you know, and it ain't easy. But if we don't stand for something, we'll fall for everything and lose everything that we work so hard to abstain. You know, how deep is deep? That's deep. It's deep when you had a loved one in your life that would nurture you, that would talk to you, even when you get mad or didn't want to hear, but they would still call mom, they would still call dad, they would still call uncle or granddad or auntie or niece, and they are no longer here. And we can't take drugs. We can't use. It's deep now. Come on, it's real deep because we can't take nothing. We got to deal with, the moment, at the moment, each minute of the day, without using anything. And that's deep for me, because we manifest how to ourselves how to deal with pain without the use of drugs and alcohol. And when I tell you that I love the stories that come out of recovering addicts, because they're not made up. They're not selling themselves, or they don't charge us to tell a story. We are the story. We are the person that lived in that truth, in that story. So it says, how deep, I had to write this down because I was thinking so fast, how deep we must have felt hating on ourselves, hating on ourselves because we messed up, or because we didn't do something right. It's deep when we got to look down and look at the ugliness of our addiction and of our personality. That's pretty deep to me, to understand that this disease don't care. It don't care how you feel. It don't care how you look. It don't care how you dress. It don't care what kind of work you do. You just a person that I need to get in your body, and need you to understand that you must want me so I can keep on acting and behaving through the drug to get to you. They don't get it. People just, because we find until we pick up the drug. We find until we take a drink. We find until we stick our arms with heroin or cocaine, and we're fine. But once we have to remember that we have an addiction, and that condition really surfaces when we going through pain. That's the only thing I can tell you, because most of the time I got eyes when I dealt with something that hurt me, or dealing in pain, or something I ain't never dealt with yet, and I got a choice to get high to get rid of that. Oh, I was down for that one. Anytime I ain't got to think, or like the death of my mother, the death of my son, I couldn't drink, I couldn't take nothing. I was bibulated, however you say. I was all over the place. But guess what? I had some peoples in my life that came to my rescue. I had some peoples in my life out of the recovery field that came to my rescue, because they knew I was hurting. They knew how close our mother was. Or even for the ones that wasn't that close, or even for the ones that put their mother and father through something, still we made a change. We made a change. And we have to learn that getting high never solves anything. We have to learn that loving and missing our loved ones, using will never solve the equation of why we need to stay clean. We must stay clean at all times, no matter what. How deep is deep? How deep? Hey, Diamond. Good to see you. How deep is deep? When you lay there and see your mother or father take their last breath, or not even on that, it's real deep when you get a phone call and your mom and dad or your daughter or son done died, and you couldn't even say goodbye. How deep is deep? But through that pain right then, through that pain, we feeling a certain pain. Because see, everybody ain't reached that pain of where you lose a mother or father or sister or brother or a child. Everybody ain't reached that point. And they don't know what it is from when Satan tried to get in through pain, because he know that he do his best work through pain. I don't know about y'all, but for me it was pain. It was all pain, always failure, always pain, always rejected, always denial. It was pain for me that kept me getting high. And it was going to be love that was going to bring me out of it. It was going to be that. It was going to be a NA program. It was going to be a God of my understanding that bring me out of how to deal with pain. The program really works. The disease of an addiction is real, and it will manifest at any given time. You know, even when you think you got yourself all together, and then you get some bad news. Like that morning, I got the bad news. Like Robin got the bad news yesterday that her mother had passed. So when we get that bad news, it takes us to another surface place in our life, an area in our life that we haven't experienced before. Come on, Renee, tell the truth. I had never experienced losing my mother. I had never experienced losing my son. I had never experienced that. So that's where the program come in and shows up and show out to see how much you have dealt in the program to work them steps and know that we can't use no matter what happens. How deep is deep when we start hating on ourselves because we failed somebody else. Not only us, that we failed somebody else. How deep is that? It's a deep situation. I'm talking about the deep because as I was driving today, I was asking God, God, we are our best stories. We are the ones that live them stories. We are the ones that could tell the truth and hold the truth, so nothing but the truth about our story. Our pain, our losses, our demeanor, our setbacks, dealing with kids that don't want to deal with us because we was in our addiction. That's deep because addiction came between a daughter and mother, or a father and a son, or a mother and father, however way you want to put it. But that was deep for me because this was something that I hadn't experienced, or we haven't experienced until we got on drugs. Until we got on drugs, we experienced the loss. And my loss was the loss of drugs because I couldn't take no drugs no more. I couldn't drink. I couldn't get high. I had to deal with everything on a natural basic. I had to deal with everything. I had to deal with burying my mother. I had to deal with burying my son. I had to deal with getting cancer. I had to deal with having kidney disease. I had to deal with losing a kidney. I had to deal with some things. And to me, that was real deep for me because nobody didn't tell you how to do. I didn't have no construction on what I got when I got clean. Only instruction I had was the 12-step program. But before I could even get in this 12-step program, I had to identify with some things that I had never identified with before. And it was deep. And it's very deep. That's why I picked this topic. How deep is deep? What do you consider deep? Because when you bury somebody that you love and they no longer here and you clean and you can go through it without using, and to me that's very deep because it was a time in our life when pain hit us. We didn't have a nurturing piece of bone in our body. All we wanted to do was ease the pain. So that was deep. This is very deep. For this conversation is deep because what a recovering addict goes through to keep their self-worth, to keep their identity, to keep their character, to keep their self shining through a dark place in their life. I think it's marvelous that somebody don't pick up that just lost their ever for loving loved one. It's very deep. And for ones who haven't experienced, then you wouldn't know how deep it is. But for the ones that's been through it, then you know. It says how deep we must have felt hating on ourselves when everyone else had gave up on us. I had to write the things that I can identify with me using, and then I'm clean now. And it was how deep is deep. It was a very deep place, and it got even deeper in my life when we were using, because we did so many unbelievable things as a human being to lower our standards, to do to ourselves or be a cause of breaking up a relationship or separating from your wife and your husband because of an addiction. It's very deep. And I know why I picked this subject now. I know why I picked this subject now. Deep is when you set out to lie and think of things to lie about just to come up with something to say so you can get high. That's very deep. That's mind balance, because you're playing Russian roulette with your own brain. That means you got to come up with this lie to tell this lie to make it sound good so you can go get some more money so you can get high over and over again. That's real deep for me. I don't know what y'all call deep, but that was deep for me. You know, because it took me out of my character. It took me below, way below my character. Way below my character. To try to fit in with people because they, was, this side. That's why I understand when I watch movies and the girl that got all the friends, everybody want to be on her side, or the guy that can get many women, they want to be on this side, or the girl or the guy that can throw the quickest parties and have all kind of drugs and stuff there. I want to hang with them. But see, we become followers of our own nature because we want to fit in, so we can always find a way to get more drugs or to buy more alcohol or to pop more pills. Come on, Renee, come on. See, it's deep for me, and I'm asking y'all, how deep is deep? Because when you really sit down and think about it, and I have to understand how Robin felt, because I know how I felt, and how anybody else on this broadcast today feels or come up on this broadcast. And believe me, they will come, and they will question that, is how deep is deep? Well, deep to me is when you go outside of your character and you go in somewhere in a dark place, and like an alley or a dog house or the backyard or in some bushes or in somebody's house you don't even know, in your car, to get high and to be alone in the dark places where the mice is and the rats and everybody was eating on your feet. Come on, Renee, tell the truth. When you was in a dark place in your life, where you was in the garage and nobody knew where you was, but you was nowhere. You was in the garage and laying on a couch because you was getting high and you didn't want nobody to see you or your kids to see you. You isolated yourself, from the deception of your kids looking at you or looking in your eye to see that you are a drug addict. You are the things that people are saying you are. So that becomes, how deep is that? For you to take yourself out of your own bed, a naturally born bed that feels good, and all of a sudden you in a garage where it's dark. And that's what happens when we get to using and drinking and dibbing and dabbing and don't want nobody to know we using this and don't want nobody to know we drinking this. But honey, one thing I know about the disease of an addiction, it will show up, it will come out, and other people will start to identify that something wrong, you got a problem. Well, that happened to me. So if it didn't happen to y'all, then y'all don't know how to relate to that. Like I said, my eyes still wide, forgive me, but don't forgive me, because I'm going to rub it if it's dripping. Thank you. So my thing is, how deep is deep? Deep is when you neglect. Come on, y'all, this is deep. Deep is when we neglect our own kids. Deep is when we sell our own kids. See, when I look at something on TV, I never got to that part. I never got to understand or be in the midst of that part of when you will sell your own kid to get some drugs. When you know your kid is messing with a grown man and they 13 and 14, but she going to get some out of it. She going to get some money. She going to get some drugs. to help you with your addiction. I haven't went that deep yet, but it's even deep enough when you neglect your kids or your family due to the drug addiction, due to your behavior. When you don't show up for a football game and everybody else of your kids' friends is there, but you're not there. That's deep to me, that the drug had just took over. It took over all my abilities to be there on time for my kids, to do that. And when I think about the 1 or 2 times that I did do that, because I was always around my kids, but it was 1 or 2 times where I was getting so high that I just couldn't make it and just didn't care to make it, so I didn't go. To me, that's very deep, when you want to sell your own baby to get your choice of drugs and to put them out there in the world and in the street to other unknown predecessors and the unknown. It's just deep when we get to the far, but drugs will take you that far. Alcohol and drugs will take you. That disease of an addiction, it don't care. It don't care how much money you got. It don't care about your feelings. It don't care because you just hurt somebody that you truly love, or you just hurt somebody that's been good to you. The drugs don't care. It does what it's supposed to do. It destroy, help people stay broken, not get your life become unmanageable to the disease of an addiction. And when you say the disease of an addiction, it can be any disease of an addiction. It can, all of us addiction. Anything that you put in your mouth that alters your mood, and then now you was this way and now you that way, is an addiction. Anytime that you can't stop, anytime you keep picking up something and can't stop, no matter what pain it costs you, no matter how miserable you got in doing your using, it's just that powerful to keep you going. How deep is that? It's very deep. Very deep. It says, how deep when we even think how we endure life. How we didn't, first we admire life. First we love life. And then all of a sudden we get on this addiction. Come on, y'all. It's deep right now. Come on, y'all, because I'm talking about me. I don't know who else I'm talking about, but I'm talking about me. How it got to where when you was doing no drugs, none, you was still okay. Even with your self-centered self, even with your character, even with your the way you use or did people before you even picked up the drug, you was okay, but you still had to find a way to fix everything. How deep is that when we say we endure life, we say we love life, and then all of a sudden we get on the drugs, and all of a sudden now we can't get it right. Our life is unmanageable. I'm doing the most simple things in the world. I'm hurting people. I'm hurting myself. I'm lying to myself every day that I look in that mirror and see my face, and I know I'm lying to myself. How deep is that? How deep is it that we can go and tell a lie to our loved ones and tell them that our kids need food, or I ran out of gas, or I can't pay my rent because I done smoked it all up? How deep is that? Just to get one more, how deep is it that we want to take our own lives when we didn't give ourselves lives? Now, if that ain't never, if you ain't never had to deal with it, thank God, because I had to deal with it. I tried to take my life 3 or 4 times and to counter some things that, but unnaturally, I wouldn't think it was possible to have seen. But God took me through that process too. But how deep is that to where you want to take your own life because you can't get it right, because you can't figure it out, or because you hurting too bad, or because somebody disappointed you so bad you don't want to be here no more? Do you know it's people who struggle with that? Do you know it's people who took their own life because they didn't know how to deal with the pressure, the rejection, the denial? They didn't know how to deal with that, and they ain't here. They took their life. They said mental illness, You know, to me, it's just feeling the raw, feeling everything. Mental illness could play a part, but sometimes mental illness don't play a part. Sometimes people just get fed up living because they can't figure it out. They can't get themselves together. They keep doing what they think is right, but then it keep turning out to be wrong. How deep is that? When you want to take your own life. It's deep. I can speak about that. That's my story. See, I can speak about that because that's my story. I wanted to take my own life because I had a habit of messing up. I had a habit of turning something good into something ugly. I had a habit of not facing my own fears. I had a habit of not dealing with my own self-centeredness. I had a fear of not dealing with the unknown. How deep is deep? How deep is when you and everyone think that you are nobody because you become a crackhead, or you become an alcoholic, or you become a dope fiend, as they may say. How they talk about you and scan your name and how, but they don't realize it can hit their home. They don't realize it can hit their husband or boyfriend. They don't realize it can hit their child or their grandson or their son. They don't realize it. And some of them do realize it and they don't care. They don't care. They don't care. How deep is that? How deep is that? Deep is when you're driving up under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and in your mind, you think you the best driver on the highway. That's been me. It ain't funny, but I have to laugh sometime how God took somebody like me and made me become an overcomer. Made y'all become an overcomer. See, everybody on here that comes on here that know my story got a story, and they know how they became an overcomer. They know how they had to face consequences of their addiction, and they became an overcomer. I love overcomers. That mean you didn't stop at nothing. That mean you've been hurt. That mean you've been denial. That mean my husband hurt me. That mean my husband cheated. That mean my kids did some things I didn't like. That mean I did some things I like, but I still kept getting high and not deal with it. But once you start being an overcomer means that you can face any situation in your life, whether it's death, whether it's loneliness, whether it's depression. You can deal with anything when you become an overcomer. And I've been an overcomer for a long time because I don't let nobody take me there. You know, that was one of my main habits. When we are in the use of drugs, we let people just do things. Some people tell you the truth. If you want to be honest, they like seeing you drunk. They like seeing you in a flick of a moment, not in control of yourself. They like that. You know, so they can take over, so they can hurt your feelings and talk about you and keep you getting high. We are overcomers. How deep is deep? When I say how deep is deep, you have to realize how deep is deep. You see, when we was using, hey, Cousin Pam, good to see you, baby. How deep is deep? How is deep? When you say, well, why would you say how deep is deep? Because that's deep. When you can go from one person and change your whole life in a matter of times and be another whole person, that's deep. How deep is it that you can not be there for your kids? Like I said, sell your kids for drugs, neglect your kids, not be there for your kids. You know, these are things that we have to look at as we start coming to the program of how we became very self-centeredness through our addiction, and we didn't care about our loved ones. That's real talk. And that's why I said today that I love the stories that I hear at a meeting or hear at a convention or hear from a person talking. You know, that's why I wasn't on last night, because I had to speak in Sussex. and I did pretty good. And then after that, we went out, and and I knew I wasn't going to be able to come on, and I had an engagement that I always show up on. How deep is that? When you can sell your own daughter, or just won't be there for none of your kids, or you just leave the house. I ain't talking about nobody. Y'all might not be experienced this, but I did. How deep is it when you know that you disappeared from your house for 4 or 5 days and didn't show up, and nobody knows where you are? That was pretty deep, and now it's gonna come to a point to where we're going to get ourselves together and become an overcomer. We all are overcomers. Anybody that went through the drug addiction, and anybody who went through things and became their own story, how deep is deep? The deep is getting, like I said, in a car thinking you're the best driver, and you end up hurting somebody. Or you end up bodily harming, hurting somebody due to your alcoholism, your drug use, your that's deep. Not caring about nobody's lives around you, just knowing that under your thinking that you are the best driver on the road, and you hurt somebody for life, or you kill somebody, or you cause somebody to lose a limb, or you cause somebody to have scars due to our self-centeredness up under the influence of drugs and alcohol. How deep is that? That's very deep for me. That's very, very. Hey, Rachel, good to see you, baby. How that's very deep for me. When we were used to having nice things. We was used to having this and that, and having a nice house and cars and everything. But it got deep. It got a little bit deep for us because we didn't know how to keep it. We got it, and we held it on for a while until we was introduced to the drugs, the streets, lifestyle, lifestyle for real. And then all of a sudden, the everything that we had accumulated became unnecessary for us. So we started losing it a little bit at a time. But over the amount of time, we had nothing. Over the amount of time, we still had us. We still had our self-worth. We still had that. We lost everything. And when we trust someone and they, what about how deep is this when you trust somebody and you love somebody, and then all a family member or somebody, they come and they rape you as a little kid? How deep is that? And that takes off into your adult life, and you have to learn how to forgive, because I talk about me. I had to learn how to forgive, and I don't talk about it much is because it's a painful thing that when I even talk about it, I still could feel the pain that I felt them nights. So I try not to talk about it too much, but if I have to, God must have wanted me to, because that's why I brought it up. Being raped from somebody that you trusted and loved, and they just they hurt you, and they pulled on you, and they did the things that you would never think about a person to do. How deep is deep? How we laid in the hospital, like I said, on our bed of affliction, and had to really have a conversation with the person laying on the bed with the affliction. That was me. How I had to battle in my mind that is the doctor gonna know that I got high? Is they gonna see it in my, that was pretty deep, that I'm already in a place in my life where I'm sick as a dog, got meningitis or whatever somebody else got, and you in the hospital and you battling with the inner brain or your brain, wondering if they gonna find out that you're a crackhead or a dope fiend or IV user or whatever. That's pretty deep to me. Things like that is very deep. How we became overcomers. Yeah, I'm going to get into that at the last end. And then it says, when you can take a good person, and we were good, take a good person, and then all of a sudden they become a bad person that do bad things, and just to get one more hit, that disease of an addiction ain't no joke. It will come up on you when you ain't even asking for it. And I didn't even like the way it smelled, but I liked the way it made me feel, because I didn't have to remember nothing. I didn't have to even think about it. All I could do was escape from all of it. But guess what? Reality hit me, because the next few days when I didn't have none, it started all over again. I was right back where I started at. So that ain't good. That was pretty deep to me, to think in my mind that I can keep getting high and it was going to take away all the hurt and the pain. No, I had to deal with that physically and mentally with somebody else to help me get through that situation. When you keep blaming other people for your disease, you know, I had did that for a while. I had blamed rape, I had blamed hurt, I had blamed the trial, but the one person that I didn't blame was me. And I had to get butt naked truth. But I had to look at me. I had to get honest. And what I love about the NA program, if you don't learn to get honest, you won't be here long. Did you hear me? You will not be here long. You have to learn how to be honest. You have to learn to do something that you ain't never did before. And that was take a leap of faith and understand that the God of your understanding can bring you, if he can bring you through all this deep pain and all the deep things we had to go with, then he can bring you out of everything. And that's what I hold on to. And deep is when you let love, now hear me real good, deep is when you let love turn into hate. When you used to love, when you used to have a compassionate heart and love, when you used to understand that love can be real, it can be a good thing, it can be a nice feeling, it can be an honorable hug, it can be all things to you. But when you love somebody and now you in addiction and now you hate everybody, and you hate certain peoples, or you got or even in this disease, we got a manual where we can pick out who we don't like, pick out who we hate, pick out who we like, but we don't love nobody because we didn't love ourselves. Ain't that deep? It's deep when we don't love ourselves, so we don't see nothing in nobody else worth seeing, because we hurting our own self and we in denial. Everybody done told us, everybody done said it, but we still in that doggone denial that we don't have an addiction. I did. I'm still recovering. I must not take this disease for granted. I must understand it can get and hit the best peoples, the best person, the best. It don't care. It don't care who it hurt, who it turn up. I've seen doctors, I've seen lawyers, I've seen teachers, I've seen good moms, I've seen good fathers, I've seen good firemen, I have seen good liars. I have seen, now to see a good liar that can lie so well, but now you up under the influence of an addiction or the disease, that's pretty deep to me, because your own lies caught up with your own self. But I done seen the best get turned out. I done seen it. Ain't nobody got to tell me, and that's my story, because I done lived to see all that. Understand that the disease don't have a certain person or a certain look or a certain attitude or a certain dress code you have. It don't care about none of that. All it cares about is to get in your mind and to undermine you, to make everything unbelievable for you. That's what I understand. Self-will will become more about us than the will of God. And to the God of my understanding, that's what happened. My self-will, my own thinking, my own way, the way I do things, the way I see things, the way I pretend things, my own self-centered ways was more important than the will of God. That was important. That was important. Portray your hurt, lose our right to live. I talked about that only only do everything we do seem like it turned out to be wrong. The good side of how deep it gets is now how deep is deep. And I talked about that. I picked that because it was a song I heard from a close friend, and in that song it asked some questions, and I had to identify, listening to that song, how deep is deep. How deep is deep? Man, most addicts, most recovering addicts was in a deep place in their life. They was doing some of the unmanageable bullcrap things. You know, it was deep for us. And that's why when we get clean and we learn a new way to live, and we start going to meters, and we start doing service work, or we start showing up, you know, your whole way of how you think and how you live come into your life. But some people think they can still do that, and because you don't go to meeting, but you can still pop pills and you can still do that. It's called living. That ain't living, because eventually it's going to take you back to something stronger or either worse. I know. I've been there. I ain't got a lot of nobody on here. My story is my story. Your story is your story. Everybody on here got a story, and whatever comes out as your story is going to be a winner, because it's the truth of your story, because you lived it. Well, you lived that story. I lived my story of wanting to kill myself. I lived that story of wanting to deny myself. I lived that story. We have lived our own story. And it's a best winner for me. And let me tell you why. Because we overcame. We are overcomers. We became overcomers in our own truth of our story. We became overcomers. When somebody asks me, well, what is overcomer? Overcomer is a situation as a time that, like, say if you have heart trouble, and the doctor tells you can't walk but 2 blocks. But in your mind, I'm an overcomer. I'm going to walk them 8 blocks. I'm going to push it. Or if you got asthma, and somebody say you can't never run, or you can't never be in no running to win nothing, I'm an overcomer. Same way with us. When we are dope fiends and users, and we manipulated, and we be lied, and we hurt our own self, we destroy relationship with families, and now all of a sudden we are overcomers. We ain't used. We got multiples of years. If you got just for today, now that's an overcomer, because you didn't use for today. Now, we are overcomers. I'm going to leave you with that. We are overcomers. And believing that overcomers are a person that didn't see it happening. I didn't believe that I would become a dope fiend. I didn't believe that I would get used to selling drugs. Then I became the best user. And then I didn't believe that I would lose all the pretty things and the cars that I had within days, or some of it months, some of it years. You know, I didn't believe that. But through it all, coming through the program of NA, Narcotics Anonymous program, it helped me become an overcomer. And an overcomer means that I ain't what you said I was no more. Overcomer means that I can take it to the limit. I can do anything I want to do, long as it's in the will of God, in the care of God, and in the care of me not doing no wrong. So we became overcomers when you can sit there and run a meeting and be at a table and wait till other people's come in and run a meeting. You're an overcomer. When you ain't got to do no more drugs just to get through the day. You know what I mean? Just to get through the day because one of your kids or your loved one or somebody done hurt your feelings, or y'all ain't speaking, and you can still move on and keep keeping on. You are overcomer. Ain't nothing gonna break me. I always tell you. You know, some people say sometimes we have to be set in our ways when it comes to a certain child. That certain child will never see nothing good, and I got to speak about that before I get off. You know, that certain child will say they forgive you and they love you, but they still holding you to things that happened when they were little. in your addiction. That's about, why don't people believe that addiction is addiction? I couldn't be the best of nothing in my addiction. I couldn't. If that's the case, if I was going to be the best of anything, I would never been using. And they still want to hold you to what you did years ago. But now look, that they became an overcomer too, but they can't see that. They only could see the worst in you. Always want to play the victim, always doing this, always want to like you got the best. No, I used to buy that. That itself kept me using. And I ain't going for it today. I work too hard and strive too hard to become that overcomer, and to continue to be that overcomer, and to continue to be clean, and to understand that this is a disease of an addiction. And we know that we have to overcome. Like when I lost, I want to talk about my girl. It ain't easy losing a mother and father. Pam lost hers. Robin and whoever else on here. It's a touchy subject. But when we lose the first love of our lives, and no matter what we became or what we did out there, but when we lose the first love of our life, and they've been in our lives for 30, 40, 50 years, and all of a sudden they don't know they're no more, we are overcomers, because we can use an excuse that I couldn't handle it. I just can't deal with it. I had to pick up and use. This is what some people do. I couldn't deal with it. So your program stopped working because your mother died, or your father died, or your son or kid died. Your program stopped working for you. That's when it's supposed to work the best. That's when you're supposed to use that program for stuff like that. We use it every day anyway. But I'm talking about in an emergency call, emergency thing. That's when we're supposed to use it and really use it. It was running for our lives. That's how I did when I lost my mother. And my son, running for my life not to use again. So I had to call on some sisters. I had to call on some high steppers. I had to call on some people that was going to nurture me and give me what I needed. And it's good to have people around you like that you can talk to, and you ain't got to worry about them talking to somebody else. See, I'm a faithful believer in that. If I tell you something, and if I hear it, I won't even ask you why you repeated what I said. You'll know why, because I won't never deal with you no more. That's how I am. If you tell me something, I hold on to it till I go to my grave. Because if you wanted everybody to know, you would tell everybody. And then some people you just can't talk to. Some people you can't tell them. You have to learn how to believe in yourself and understand yourself. And I learned one thing in this life. When I get a best friend, recovery taught me how to nurture, how to believe in that friend, how to hold that friend. When I say I love you, I truly love you. Because I ain't finna tell everybody else that, because everybody ain't worthy of me. I can say I love you with the love of God. I can say that. But I'm talking about really, truly love you. That means, I'm here. I listen. And I got about 4 friends. Well, truly 4 friends. One of them done died. It was 5. How deep is deep? And we talked about some deep things. And I'm telling all y'all, whoever come up on my page, that we are overcomers. Yeah, we know about the 12 steps of the program, 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous. We know about the God of our understanding. But do we know how good we at it being an overcomer? Do we know how good we at? Do you know we'd have been pushed down, hit, slapped, knocked down, and we did it all to ourselves. And so you gonna tell me that I'm not an overcomer because I'm steady reaching for the sky and I ain't doing the things that I was doing before no more, that I can take hurt without using drugs? Y'all better watch what I say. All y'all overcomers. Even when you in relationship and stuff happen, even when you in marriage and stuff happen, and if you come out the right way of not trying to get back at that person, just letting that person go, if you trying to do the best you can be, you're an overcomer. That's what I was. I walked away from 3 marriages. 3. When I said walked away, well, really 4, because I married that one from Africa. Just walked away. Let me drop you off to the airport. We didn't say a word. I was done. I don't hate you. It's a life experience for me. And I hope I never go through that deep. How deep is deep? I hope I never go through that deep to hurt somebody just to get a green card. What kind of person does that? But see, I had a, let me close out with this. I had a I had a place in my heart I blocked. So you couldn't get to me like that. Because I had already figured it. Wasn't for sure. How deep is deep? Being able to say let bye and be done with it and go on and live your life. That's how deep it was for me. And all these things we talked about tonight on this paper, everything that we talked about on this paper that we talked about is very deep to me. And we went through it. Thank y'all for listening to me. I love y'all. I wasn't on last night in my normal life because when I'm doing a speaking engagement or doing things and I know I can't do it, then I have to let my followers know, because I made a promise to the God of my understanding when He told me to get on here and do that, and I've been doing it ever since. But I thank y'all. We are on step 9 for Sunday at 2 o'clock. We made a direct means to such peoples whenever possible, except when they would do them harm, except when it would injure them or others. That's a good step. I've been studying on that all day to bring you something different. You know, we go through these steps every week, and I try to bring something different every week. It's never the same. It never will be the same. I want to also give some shout out. I want to give a shout out to Robin. You know, losing her mother. You in our prayers. Can y'all pray for Robin as she go through this this hurtful goodbye. This hurtful goodbye. I've been there, and I want everybody on here to pray for her. And she's been clean, and she's been doing the things. She's an overcomer, and I want her to stay focused. So, you know, we better together than alone. So y'all keep her in prayer. Shout out to Lois. Shout out to Pam, my cousin, who I love dearly. I'll see you tomorrow. And to Rachel, I love her dearly, and her babies. And everybody else that come up on this site, I thank y'all. Thank you for being a part of my process. And I think I said Diamond. I don't want to miss Diamond. Thank you too, baby. Diamond K. Griffin. I thank you so much. You know what? You know, people's come on way after I get off. And a lot of them have something to say, and a lot of them ask questions. But look, you can be doing anything else. But see, I do things positive. I tell the truth on this disease. I tell the truth on these drugs. I tell the truth about our behaviors. And I tell the truth about our actions. You know, and if it helped one person, I did that deed for the day. But, you know, I thank God for He never make mistakes. So He gave me this almost a year ago. It might be over a year that I've been on here. But I'm going to continue to be on here. I might change up some things, you know, but I need to reach the ones that struggle. And baby, when I tell you this, no lie, I have reached many. I have getting the phone calls at night, phone calls in the morning. That's how I'm able to go to these different people, places and speak. You know, in Sussex, you know, that's kind of like, you know, mostly all white, but there was a few black. But I got my message across, you know, and they asked me would I come back again. You know, I just thank God for all the reasons why I see that He wanted us to live. It's a purpose that He wants us to find in our own life, in our own story. And if you don't search and you don't do the will of God, that's why they say to the God of my understanding, if you can't find your purpose, then you're going to be lost. You're going to be lost. I found my purpose a long time ago, and it still is my purpose. I am a grateful recovering addict. And they say a grateful recovering addict will never use again. And that's where we at. And so I thank y'all. See y'all Sunday, step 9. Be safe. And if ain't nobody told you, tell them that Miss Renee says she love you. I love everybody that's on here, that comes on here after I leave, and is going to come back on here when I'm on. So I thank y'all so very much. Good night. Stay safe. And don't never let nobody tell you you're not an overcomer. And if they ask you why you're not if they ask you why you are an overcomer, tell them why. How deep is deep? Tell them. Tell them why you are an overcomer. And see what they say. Give them some things out there that you know, only you know, that you did to recover and remain recovering, and you clean. Tell them. I'll do that in a minute, because I'm proud of my clean time, and I'm proud of me being a recovering addict, and I'm proud to know I ain't got nothing. I ain't got to take nothing to get me through the day no more, but life on life terms, and that's not using drugs anymore. I have a disease, and I'm going to treat it like a disease, because I know I can't drink or use drugs ever again, and I don't want to. Good night, y'all. Good night, everyone. I love y'all. Good night, everyone, and do something nice and kind for someone.